Good morning, everyone. In addition to what Dr. Ruth Batani and Dr. Raymond Bowid shared about the mental health of the young people of today, I would be sharing the results of two studies from the hashtag iGen Hopeful Research Program. So the title of this talk, the segment of the talk is Generation Z Psychological Morbidities and Life Stories. As increasing reports on adolescents and young adults globally are engaged in suicide and negative mental health, the need to study local mental health scenarios to come up with effective psychosocial intervention is seen as a great need. Instances of local reports of students with mental health conditions are on the rise, of which this study came up with a baseline data to look into the mental health of the I generation. Before I share the results of these two studies, let me first define who are the Generation Z or the I generation. The I represents the internet generation. They are born from the birth years of 1996 to 2015, and their current age is 5 to 24. Smartphones and social media have shaped their generation. Accordingly, the I generation are more likely to be unhappy because of increased screen time that leaves them feeling isolated and discontented from others. This disconnection and less in-person social interactions contribute to higher levels of depression and anxiety. And if we look at the global headlines defining the Generation Z, this is one example. Generation Z is more likely to report mental health concerns. Another headline would say, will the kids be all right? Generation Z is both highly anxious and highly capable. And another headline mentions that college student wellness and mental health are growing. For local headlines, these are examples of the headlines. Young Filipinos are in the midst of a mental health crisis. Why Generation Z is most vulnerable to mental illness. And another headline says, a cry for help, mental illness, suicide cases rising among the youth. According to World Health Organization, one suicide happens every 40 seconds. And according to Quintos in 2017, 1 in 10 young people thought about committing suicide, and 1 out of 20 committed the act of suicide. So let me share you first the result of the hashtag iSudgen, psychological morbidities of the I generation, higher education students toward policy development. So we tried to look at the psychological morbidities of the I generation, looking at depression, anxiety, stress, and self-harming behaviors. On the other hand, we tried to look at mental protective factors such as social support and life skills. The questionnaires used for this are the DAS-21 or the Depression Anxiety Stress Scale with 21 questions and the Self-Harming Inventory. It's I should share this disclaimer for this research. The questions used were not for clinical diagnosis, but for research purposes only. Now, before I share the results, let me first define what is depression. In this slide, you can see a person under dark cloud because people under depression can show symptoms emotionally, cognitively, physically, and behaviorally. So what are the symptoms? People who are depressed can show sadness, anxiety, guilt, anger, mood swings, and irritability, while cognitively they can show self-criticism, impaired memory, indecisiveness, confusion, thoughts of death, and suicide. Physically, people who are depressed may suffer from chronic fatigue, lack of energy, sleeping too much or too little, weight gain or loss, lack of motivation, and substance abuse. Behaviorally, people who are depressed may withdraw from others, neglect responsibility, and change their personal appearance. The next concept is anxiety. These are feelings of nervousness or apprehension and self-doubt that may or may not be associated with real life stressors. And the third concept is stress. Stress is a psychological and physical reaction to certain events or situations called stressors in a person's life. So here are the results of the study. As you can see, color orange is anxiety, and most of the respondents fall in this line. 40% are extremely severe, and 23% are severe. For depression, the color blue line shows that only 4% and 12% are depressed in the extremely severe and severe level. While in the stress condition, the gray line, only 36% are normal and 36% are moderate. So from this, in this slide, we can see that what uh, what is disturbing for the I generation of today is their level of anxiety. For the next concept or for the next variable that we look into, we look at the self-harming behavior of the I generation. So what is self-harming? So this is an act with non-fatal outcome in which an individual deliberately initiates a non-habitual behavior that without intervention from others will cause self-harm. So other terms for this are parasuicide, self-injury, or deliberate self-harm. So we look into 22 self-harming behavior, including physical, non-physical, indirect, direct, interpersonal, and suicidal. So the top three most self-harm behavior engaged by the respondents, as you can see in the red boxes, 24% hit themselves on purpose, 16% torture themselves with self-defeating thoughts, and 13% abuse alcohol. While the boxes in purple represents those total respondents, 10% and below, who did this behavior. So it includes bang themselves on purpose, 7%, cut yourself on purpose, 9%, scratch yourself on purpose, 9%, distance yourself from God, 8%, and 7% attempted suicide. Those are majority of the respondents. Okay. Although there is not much difference in the percentage of respondents among males and females, self-harm behaviors which are highly physical, such as bang oneself on purpose, drive recklessly, exercise an injury on purpose, were slightly higher for males compared to females. Those which do not require much physical strength, such as cutting oneself, scratching oneself, overdosing, and starving, have more females engaged in these types of self-harm behavior. For relational self-harm behavior, more females admitted that they were in a promiscuous relationship, sexually abusive relationship, and in an emotionally abusive relationship, though this constitutes less than 3% of the total respondents. And more males admitted that they set themselves to be rejected in a relationship, although some male respondents admitted that they were in an emotionally abusive relationship. If we can see in the next slide, what is alarming is that if we add up all the respondents who tried at least one kind of self-harming behavior, 51% of them tried some kind of self-harming behavior, while 49% did not commit any kind of self-harming behavior. And one respondent said that he or she tried 13 kinds of self-harming behavior. If we look at the respondents, the total of respondents who sought for professional psychological help, only 10% of them, for both males and females, sought professional psychological help, One even said that she tried seeking professional psychological help because she cannot afford the medications that she needed. On the other hand, if we look at the protective factors such as social support, we can see that majority of the respondents identify family and friends as their source of social support and school relatives as the next source of social support. A few, less than 5%, identify the barangay community or church as their source of social support. It should be noted that for the mental health support in the aspect of religion or spirituality, some would access spiritual mental health care through individualized traditions like prayer, but not in the context of organized collective religious groups. Other mental health care behaviors of the iGeneration that does not necessarily need social support are journaling, communing with nature, food tripping, time out, which includes time to be alone, sleeping, reading books, watching movies or animes, doing positive pep talks, and searching for answers in the internet. For the life skills, we look at the life skills or the ability to adopt and positive behavior that enables individuals to deal effectively with the demands and challenges of everyday life. Life skills can be grouped into three: emotional, social, and cognitive. So under emotional life skills, in, this includes self-awareness, coping with emotion, and coping with stress. For cognitive life skills, this involves problem solving, decision making, critical thinking, creative thinking. And for the social life skills, this involves empathy, effective communication, interpersonal relationship skills. But for this research, we ask them how skillful are they in terms of the 6 life skills specified by the World Health Organization. And most of them would rate themselves average in terms of the 6 life skills. But when they were asked which life skills they needed the most, they identified communication and interpersonal life skills as the most needed life skills. Why? Because they would be able to better express themselves to their family, friends, and community. The next life skills needed identified would be creative thinking and critical thinking skills, and the third, decision making and problem solving skills. Half of the respondents also identified that the fourth needed life skill would be resilience and ability to cope with problems. The fifth is emotional intelligence, and the last one would be assertiveness and self control. So as a conclusion for this study, mental health needs of the I generation is very apparent, especially in terms of their anxiety level, where majority were under severe to extremely severe level. Depression states are also a concern, while stress levels are under normal to moderate levels. What is alarming is that almost half of the respondents admitted to engaging in self-harming behaviors, some of which consist of self-harming behaviors that endanger their personal lives. On the other hand, only 10% of the surveyed respondents were seeking psychological professional care. With such a scenario, there is a need to improve and upgrade coordinated mental health care programs for students. And the top most identified life skill needed by the respondents are interpersonal and communication skills, which also has the lowest mean. Okay, for the next study that I would be presenting, this is hashtag iGen Narratives, a life narrative approach in exploring mental health issues of the I generation in the Philippines. This look into the life stories of individuals, specifically students enrolled in understanding the self. Now, life story as a methodology answers the question, who am I? Uh, be- According to McAdams, life stories, or the stories we construct to make sense of our lives, are fundamentally about our struggle to reconcile who we imagine we were, are, and might be in our heads and bodies with who we were, are, and might be in the social context of family, community, the workplace, ethnicity, religion, gender, social class, and culture. Um, the reason why life stories are also utilized in this research as a research tool and as a pedagogical tool to help individuals heal their mental health issues is because of meaning making. Meaning making is critical and is an age related skill that appears during adolescence and improves as one grows older. So, with the life story approach, three areas in life were studied: the reconstructed past, perceived present, and the imagined future. So, how did the researcher analyze these life stories? Life scenes were looked into, and take note, life scenes are affect laden. A total of 226 respondents took part in this study, and they were given class credit for this activity. Also, most of the respondents came from Benguet and other Cordillera provinces. They also came from other provinces in northern Philippines such as La Union, Ilocos, Pangasinan, Bicol. For this study, research ethics was done. Informed consent and behavioral contract were given to the respondents, especially that um, life stories are very private in nature. Pre-research briefing and workshop on empathetic listening were given to the respondents. The briefing and processing of activity were also done. Presentation of results were also given to them, and interventions such as art workshops for self-expression and healing, nature therapy, and seminars on mental health were also conducted. So the results were grouped into vulnerability experience and protective factors. Lastly, trends were taken out into consideration from their life stories. So before I look at present the vulnerability experience of these respondents, let me first define what is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the quality or state of being exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Now, for the results, many of the respondents identified or shared experiences such as bullying when they were in their elementary or high school years, and they were bullied by their peers because they were different in terms of skills, physical attributes, religion, and this showed a non-acceptance of diversity. Many also shared about broken relationships or dysfunctional family setups, such as broken family, separation, affairs, and fatherless children. Many shared about losing a loved one through death, through sickness, accident, murder, natural process. Usually they were still in the grieving process and they were exploring the questions or what ifs in their life. Many of them also shared experiences on rejection and feeling of inadequacy. One shared that she felt like a wallflower. One shared that he felt unloved. Many shared about it was not acceptable to fail. Many also shared about non-open and judgmental communication in their families. For mental health issues, some shared attempted suicide by themselves, by their family members, by siblings, or by their mothers, or by their friends. Others shared feelings of loneliness, anxiety, and depression, and others shared the pressure with coping with expectation and the pressure of being compared. Many also shared the involvement in risk behavior such as smoking and alcohol consumption, usually during their high school years. This was admitted by both males and females, and only a few males admitted to using drugs. For risk behavior for females, I, some identified that teenage pregnancy had changed their life. As it should be taken to note that the Philippines is highest in terms of teenage pregnancy, and Cordillera is high in teenage pregnancy. Only one male admitted that getting someone pregnant changed his life. On other vulnerability experience, like poverty, lack of finances, many of the students who admitted that poverty or lack of finances changed their life would force them to become working students, or would force them to move from one home to another in search of better futures or in search of opportunities to augment the family income. Others would share about their um, their family's OFW experiences, or overseas Filipino workers, where parents would go abroad in search for a better future for their families. With going abroad, the social cost of leaving their family behind would lead to other social problems such as separation of the couple or children looking for attention. One striking narrative that I have heard is the chicken joy narrative, in which this girl, when she was a child, she was very excited when her dad brought her to Jollibee and eat chicken joy because it was her first time. But paradoxically, that was her most traumatic memory because it was the time that her mother went abroad and left her. So the chicken joy narrative is a paradox of how parents and children have to sacrifice family bonding in search for a greener future. Other vulnerability experiences is the lack of career direction. Many of them share that they are unsure of their career choice. Some shared also of health problems in which they survived cancer. For females, they were experiencing PCOS. Others shared that they were premature babies. For males, gender identity issue was more of an issue for them, where parental parental and societal expectation is seen in some of the statement, like his father expected him to be a man of strength. Instead, he became a man of grace. Some experience physical abuse, which is mostly for males, and some sexual abuse, which is mostly for females. And some became victims of disaster. Two admitted that they lost a loved one because of Typhoon Ompong in 2018. And one said that she was a survivor of the Little Kibungan landslide in Typhoon Pepeng 2009. Okay, on the other hand, there are protective factors that help these young people rise up despite of the negative problems they have faced in life. So some of the protective factors here are their engagement in the sports, which provided them with discipline and mentorship, and provided them to opportunities to improve their abilities in this area. Another protective factor is spirituality. Another is their involvement in leadership opportunities. So leadership opportunities were provided in school and in communities. So in school, they would be engaging as an officer in clubs or the Supreme Student Government, or in citizen army training. Others were involved in the community in their sangguniang kabataang barangay. Okay. And others would be engaged in the arts. Others would be engaged in receiving academic honors, involved in competitions, and having supportive family members and friends. Take note that in instances that, for example, in the OFW situation where the parents have to go abroad, it is usually the extended family members like grandparents who's, who takes the place of the parents to go abroad. In our language, we call it the tagasalo. Okay, another protective factor is the career planning. This is where in high school when they were involved in career immersion, it provided them a more clear path on what to take for their career trajectory. Now, if we look at patterns of protective factors, what I presented a while ago was more external factors. Now, what I will present now are more internal factors like grit or the ability of not giving up, and hope and optimism, spirituality, humor, gratitude, and resourcefulness. When these internal protective factors were seen in the life story of the individuals, and when these are high, they the tendency is that they have a redemptive kind of story. When these are low, they have a contaminated kind of story. Because according to McAdams, there are two trends, the redemptive and the contaminated kind of story. So in this next slide, as you can see, there is a graph where there's a deep, which represents what's this? The negative experiences in life, and there's a rise in the graph, which represents the ability to bounce back. Now, even with the negative life experiences, when there are protective factors, both internal and external, which helps the individual rise back, the life story would be considered a redemptive life story. Now, I would share this finding as I observe in the life stories of the students. When there is coherence and continuity of stories from past, present to imagined future, the tendency is they have a redemptive kind of stories. You can see the hope. You can see that they can imagine a better future for themselves. But on the other hand, contamination stories would have a very vague picture of the future and non-resolution of the past and present experiences. Mindsets are darkly marked from negative experiences, and light at the end of the tunnel cannot be seen from the stories being told. On the other hand, redemptive stories leave the listener a sense of hope and direction, of which the storyteller communicates his or her ability to process and make sense of the past in order for him or her to traverse a better and brighter future. Redemptive life stories are not free from adversities or negative experiences, but what sets them apart are the storyteller's ability to bounce back. Now, at the end of doing all of these life stories, I also asked the feedback of the students, and the students would say that there was a realization that they were not alone in their experiences. So these stories were, I will read some of their feedback. One said that I came to realize that we are different in many ways, that I came to learn my flaws and improve my abilities. I learned to respect and understand others and appreciate the life they have and their experiences. This has given me the opportunity to express the feelings and emotions I have. It taught me lessons that help me express what I am feeling towards myself, my family, and to other people. Also, it made me understand and know my other classmates through their stories, activities, and interactions. Another one said, it was enlightening and gentle, sort of a therapy. Another said, it helped me become a better version of myself. And another said, I became more open and it taught me how to forgive. Okay, so the summary themes from their feedback was they were able to make sense of their life trajectory. Second, they became socially aware and be connected with the issues of the young people. Third, it provided an avenue for them to socially support one another. Fourth, it provided an opportunity to practice empathy with the self and to others. And lastly, it became therapeutic for some. It provided them a step towards closure and processing, as many are not availing of psychoclinical services. So as a conclusion, many of them are experiencing a lot of issues that affects their mental health. Um, Many are experiencing dysfunctional relationships or families. Others are experiencing unsafe spaces, especially in school, like for instances of bullying. Gendered issues are teenage pregnancy and sexual harassment, focusing on females. Gender identity crisis and physical harassment are more of a male issue. On the other hand, there are protective factors that protect them or help them create redemptive or resilient life stories. For internal, there are positive emotions, greed, spirituality that help them, and external factors such as social support, resiliency programs of government and non-government agencies. Okay, so the secret is to strengthen these factors to create a more resilient generation based on these factors. Also, the life story as a research tool and a pedagogical intervention tool is a powerful tool for the I generation to make sense of their life stories and to develop a better mindset toward reaching their goals in spite of the negative setbacks they have encountered in life. So we did not end with that. We did some research interventions, and these are some of the samples. Tree planting, spearheaded by the Benguet State University Supreme Student Government in 4 areas: Ambyong, Shilan, Green Valley, and Itogon. These students were able to plant and dedicate a tree, where they can dedicate the tree to their future goals or dedicate it as to their loved ones, especially when they lost a loved one through death. They can dedicate that tree to that loved one. Another intervention done was seminar workshop like how to encourage or how to develop the flourishing self. Another is an intervention using art workshop and exhibit spearheaded by the Office of Student Services. So with this, we would like to thank you for acknowledge the respondents who took part in the studies, the Supreme Student Government of Benguet State University, the Social Science Department, the Office of Student Services, the communities of Shilan, Ambyong, Itogon, and Green Valley, the DA, the DENR, and the College of Forestry for the seedlings, the Office of Research Services and Institute of Social Research and Development, and unnamed individuals and offices who help this research program in one way or the other for the upliftment of the mental health of the youth. So thank you for listening, and I will end with this quote. A life story is written in chalk, not in ink. It can be changed. You can change your life for the better by creating a better story for your life. And another pahabol, I would like to advertise BSU's mental health program spearheaded by the BSU Guidance and Counseling Unit. You can find their Facebook page in Facebook. Here is their uh, their group. And tomorrow, for September 25, 2020, they will be organizing a mental health talk. Please feel free to visit them, and thank you for listening.